So a couple of years ago, no car manufacturer introducing a new car thought that the world would fall off a cliff and every car they made would be sold out. Well, some cars continue to be sold out. One of them is an all-electric car from Mercedes, to the point where they really can't catch up. So now they're on their next step, which of course has to be an SUV. Okay, so it's obviously an SUV, but what exactly is it? It's an SUV built off the EQS sedan platform, which in turn is sort of built off the W223 S-Class platform. However, this, unlike the W223 S-Class, is only on offer as an EV propulsion system like the EQS. It is on offer as a rear-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, the EQS 450 Plus, as well as the EQS 580, which we are driving today. The obvious difference, a rear electric motor or dual motor. In the case of the dual motor, they have, well, different types of output. So let's start with that basic rear-wheel drive. That's 265 kilowatts. The torque in the rear drive is only 419 pounds. I know, a huge bummer, isn't it? Then we move up to the all-wheel drive. That is a measly 590 pounds of torque. Then there's this, the 580, 633 pounds of torque, 400 kilowatts, which translates to 536 horsepower. Then there's how do you store the energy? This is a 107.8 kilowatt hour battery that's broken up into 12 different modules. That is then fed through a 9.6 kilowatt onboard charger. In terms of charging times, there is the fast charging to go from 10 to 80%. That takes just over 30 minutes. To go to a full charge from 10%, that's over 11 hours. Now, just after I touched down here in the great state of Colorado, the US EPA released their official range estimates for all three flavors of EQS SUV. Surprise of surprises, the rear-wheel drive, that's the best at 305 miles of range. But then, interestingly, both all-wheel drive models that have differing torque outputs, they're the same at 285 miles of range. Then we need to discuss performance figures, because whether it's a 450 or a 580, a lot of torque on offer here. 0 to 60 in the rear-wheel drive, 6.5 seconds. 0 to 60 in the 450 all-wheel drive, 5.8 seconds. The 580 we're driving today, that one, 4.5 seconds to 60. No matter which flavor, VMAX on all of them, 130 miles an hour. So an important point of information, which is germane to today's discussion and also proves as a point of reference. Remember that EQS 580 sedan we've already driven? That was a hair under 5,700 pounds. So it really wouldn't take a brain surgeon to realize this ain't gonna be a lightweight either. 6,153 pounds, or depending on how you express your weights and measures, 2,735 kilograms. If this was the 450 two-wheel drive, it would be a measly 200 pounds less with that sport mode. Oh yeah, that's 633 pounds of torque. That's very quick. It delivers power, not like the AMG, but not like a basic Mercedes. This is definitely middle of the road in terms of power delivery in like the SUV world of Mercedes. Now, all that aside, what I would find fascinating is a bit of an experiment. The way this thing delivers power is seamless. One could also classify it as efficient, but that's through the single-speed transmission. What if Mercedes were to pull the same trick as Porsche and do a two-speed transmission with this amount of torque? I mean, 633 pounds of torque. Okay, put this another way. That's my kind way of saying, yeah, this is a very fast car, but there's an opportunity to make it just a wee bit faster. Here's the reason why they don't. This, like the EQS sedan, it is a luxury vehicle first, and then it's an electric propulsion system. So riding underneath this is the same air ride system we've experienced in the other EQS, and this one does have the 10 degrees of rear wheel steering. So the road is presenting us with an opportunity to demonstrate driving dynamics. That's a bump. Didn't really feel the impact of that because that's what this thing was designed to do. Which brings us to an inflection point in our experiment today, bringing together the propulsion system as well as the driving dynamics. And here, this is the latest step in a big change that I see Mercedes is doing. Back in the day when I grew up just soaking up car magazines, whether it was a Mercedes, a BMW, they said, oh my God, this is a Teutonic beast. And everything was Teutonic. And I think they just back in the day, like to throw that word out. And it meant there was a heft, there was a certain stiffness, a composure to the suspension of everything, whether it was a luxury car or the basic Mercedes. Because if I'm honest, every Mercedes, older Mercedes, when you get up to speed, they kind of all feel the same. This is a drastic shift, at least everything in the EV portfolio. To me, Mercedes is moving away from this Teutonic feel. You don't have that composure. It's more about a comfortable pair of jeans. It's more about something that's very familiar, something that I go so far as saying almost has the feel of like a Lexus RX. Granted, this is a very big Lexus RX, but it has that same feel. And if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, they're doing it by design. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the Options game with today's... Wait a minute. Is it time to play that game? Because the only pricing I've got is the base pricing. So let's do this. Let's take a stab in the dark on everything else and then discuss the things we know about. This, the EQS 580, has a base price of $125,950. Now, as a point of reference, that two-wheel drive 450 we keep on talking about, that one has a base price of $104,400. Add all-wheel drive to that, $107,400. Now, it's not quite that simple, because like other Mercedes, we're starting to see different flavors of each model. And interestingly, they call the cheap seats, the most basic one, the premium. And in this case, it comes with some premium stuff. Like, for example, a panoramic sunroof is fitted as standard, as is leather interior, and the driver's assistance package, which, repeat after me, is not a self-driving car, it is level 2 autonomy. Then we move on to something called the Executive, which adds the head-up display, the massage seat, and, believe it or not, the 4-zone climate control. Then we move up to the Pinnacle, and that's more of like the car to be driven in because it has the executive seating in the back, which adds the tablet. So if I'm taking a stab in the dark, couple of options on that fancy one with a 4-place seating, that one's about 150 grand. Then the design. And here, Mercedes, they call it the one bow design. I call it polarizing because you either love it or hate it. Nothing in between. Then we got to close this out with some facts. This car, yes, it is a Mercedes, but it is not built in Deutschland. Instead, this comes from the Alabama plant. It is the first all-electric car from their, as the Germans call it, Tuscaloosa plant. So what's that old saying? When in Rome, do as the Romans. And in this case, it's Colorado. And you and I happen to have some friends that really know the off-road game. So why don't we use their brand new fancy Tumbleweed Ranch and put this electric SUV, or what we think is an SUV, to the test. And here we're going to go into Andre's pit, and it's broken up into a number of challenges. This challenge over here, the rock challenge, I am not willing to put, I'm guessing, what, a $150,000 vehicle on that. But let's try the logs. I think that would be a wonderful first test here. And this is ironically called Logs Avenue. I've seen Tommy attempt this with a dog in a Nissan Rogue. I think we have better credentials here because we've got more torque. So let's see if the torque works. And notice, with this whole zero layer system, I can put the off-road app above the navigation system so I can see the approach and departure angles. I can see what the vehicle is doing as I'm going here. No, this is actually better than I thought. The torque really helps here. It's almost as if this car on road tires glides over the logs. And I'm even pulling out of this hole without any issue whatsoever. Again, on road tires. Okay, so now let's make this a little bit more difficult and go over to the next test, which is ruts. And here we're going to be testing the articulation of a very heavy vehicle. Here I don't have as much hope. So let's try and see if the torque gets us through here. Get into the first rut. Now, just so we understand, I've put this in off-road mode, which does increase the clearance a bit. Wow, again, this is moving pretty well. Just as an aside here, my camera crew, they are using a GLS 450, and we attempted this in a GLS 450 before I started in this, and that struggled literally in this area. It couldn't get any traction with the same road tires. Oh, here we go. The road, no. It's not spinning like the GLS 450. That is impressive. I did not expect this thing to work so well. Both the weight as well as the road tires. But it seems to be doing okay. Let's try, you know what? Let's try it the other direction. Let's go down and see if that screws anything up. Gotta tell you, these guys have a beautiful spot over here. Roman, Andre, Nathan, Tommy, I am super jealous on how beautiful this spot is. I need one of these things. Only problem is there's not enough land here for me to land my airplane. Okay, down the same rut challenge, testing our articulation. And keep in mind, the suspension on this thing, this is all full air ride, so we're not talking about axles or any of that kind of stuff that Roman and the guys test here. Or really Andre, he's kind of like the expert when it comes to off-road. Yeah, it's not even an issue. Question is, do we try that? That may be difficult. I don't like the approach and departure angles here. You know what? For grins and giggles, let's give it a whirl. Okay, here we go. I don't know, something tells me lava lane is not a good idea. I don't think we have the approach and departure angles for this. Yeah, I don't think, no, this is not a good idea. Yeah, I don't, well, wait a minute, no, we do have the approach, but no, I'm not pushing this. This car is worth too much, and I do not think we're gonna get over that hump there, because this is a 122-inch wheelbase. We will literally teeter-totter once we get to the top there. So that's the end of our little off-road demonstration. Okay, so what have we learned today? Well, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but the whole luxury car first, EV propulsion system second thing, that works better as an SUV. And it has something to do with that extra almost 400 pounds of weight, which brings us to the wish list. And here I've got two pretty sizable asks that can be accomplished in the coming AMG version of this. Number one, how about that 2-speed transmission? You're gonna have even more torque than this. Perhaps we release some of that with that second gear. And number two, you know the whole stabilization system to the suspension in the GLS AMG, it defies physics, it is magical, however you want to put it. This needs that, and probably not just the AMG. But this is one man's opinion and the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, a little bit behind the scenes, some of you may have noticed I'm not exactly shooting at home, but I'm not shooting on the road. This is kind of like home away from home. This is Roman's new Tumbleweed TFL Ranch. It is amazing. Technically, this is the second episode I'm shooting here, but this is the first one you are seeing. So a huge thank you to Roman, Tommy, Andre, Nathan, and the whole gang for letting me use this place. And none of them are here. I had the place to myself the entire time I've been here shooting with Mercedes. Until I see you probably back in the hangar in the next episode. Bis später.